Hello. Now we are going to look at some income tax questions where we have to find the gross pay. So we might be told other information, but we have to work backwards to get back to the original gross pay, the pay before we have any taxes or deductions removed. So how are we going to walk backwards? Well, we're going to walk backwards because we know the story of how we get from gross pay to our net income or our take-home pay. So we're now going to trace that story backwards and figure out what steps we have to take. So Ola's take-home pay is €1,290 a week. Their tax credit is €90. All income is taxed at 20%. So this is going to be a slightly simpler situation. We're not going to have our graduated tax of 20 and 40%. That'll happen for Jean in a minute. So we know our take-home pay. Now that we know is our net income, and we are looking for our gross income, our GI. And we have our tax credit, which we usually call TC, and we know that our tax rate is going to be at 20%. So there's lots of information given to us there. So we know that our net income is equal to 1,290. We know our tax credit is equal to €90, and we know our tax is at 20%, and we're looking for our gross income. So how are we going to get there? Well, let's start with our net income, our take-home pay. So we know that a net income comes from having our gross income, the thing we are looking for, minus all of our deductions. In this case, the only deductions we're told about are tax. So that means that our net income is going to be our gross income minus our net tax, our total tax or tax payable. So we then say, well, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I know. I don't know the net tax. So how am I going to get the net tax? Well, I know what the net tax is. The net tax is going to be the gross tax minus my tax credit. And I know what the tax credit is, so that's good, but I don't know my gross tax. So now I have to take one further step back and say, how am I going to get my gross tax? Well, my gross tax is going to be my tax at 20%. So my gross tax is going to be my T20. In this case, I don't have a T40. I don't have a standard rate cutoff point that I'm given. So I'm going to say that it's going to be 20%. So 20% of my gross income. And that's all it is in this particular case. There's nothing that I need to add up. That means my gross tax is just 0.2. I put this in my calculator, I get 0.2 of my gross income. So that's the first step. I now have gone down as far as I can. Let's start to work back up to this net income that I actually have numbers for. So my net tax, the next level up that I need to get closer to what I know, is going to be, net tax is going to be my gross tax. Well, I just got my gross tax, so that's 0.2 of my gross income minus my tax credit. Well, I found my tax credit. It's €90. So my net tax is 20% of my gross tax minus €90. And now I can step one level further up and I can say my net income, which I know is 1,290 a week, is my gross income minus my net tax, which is going to be what I just got here, 0.2 times my gross income minus 90. So now I have an equation. I've walked down to as far as I could, and I've come back up again to this net income equation. And now I have an equation that only has one unknown in it. I just have gross income is my unknown. You can call this X if you prefer. I've kept it as GI to keep it clear what it is we're looking for. But now this is just an algebraic equation, and we can solve it to find our value for the gross income. So gross income, I have a bracket to multiply out here, so I have a minus. We can imagine that it's a -1. We multiply that in, so again, you can put in a little 1 there if you find it more comfortable. Minus 0.2 GI plus 90. I subtract 90 from both sides and I have some like terms. So I can add them together and I subtract 90 from both sides. And I get 1200 is equal to, I have 1 GI minus 0.2 GI. So 1 minus 0.2, I'm going to end up at 0.8. GI. And then I have to divide both sides by 0.8 to get gross income by itself. And when I do that, I get 1500. So my gross income is equal to 1500 euro. So we can see how by knowing the story of these steps, we can go backwards or forwards as we need to in the question. Now let's do one that involves our standard rate cutoff point. The only difference is going to be that our net tax, our gross tax, I should say, is going to involve adding up our tax at 20% and our tax at 40%. So this is really just another opportunity to see this structure playing out, to tell ourselves this story. So Jean's net income is 33,500. The tax credit is 1,650. Sorry, 1,650. The standard rate cutoff point is 35,300. And the standard rate of tax is 20%, higher rate is 40%. What is the gross income? Now, something that might easily trip people up is the standard rate cutoff point is higher than the net income, the take-home pay. That's not a problem. We've lost, by the time we get to net income, we could have lost a third of income. So it's not a problem if you see a question where the net income is lower than the standard rate cutoff point. It's perfectly reasonable, or perfectly possible, I should say, that we are still going to have some money charged or taxed at the higher rate. So we just keep going as normal. If they tell us about a standard rate cutoff point, we're going to keep going, assuming that some of it gets taxed at 40%. So let's start telling ourselves the story. We know the net income is going to be our 33,500 euro. We know our tax credit. So we take all of this information out of the English of the question so that we can see everything we've got clearly. We have our standard rate cutoff point. In an exam question, obviously I've listed this, but in an exam question, this will be in a big English sentence, a little bit like this was, and we need to take it all out and make sure that we can clearly see all of the different parts of it. And we have T20 and T40 to deal with, and we are looking for our gross income. So I've now taken all that information out just like we did before, and we now need to start telling ourselves how we're going to get to what we need. So we know our net income, and we know that that is going to be our gross income minus our deductions. And we are always writing down these stories as we're going so that they're well ingrained in our long-term memory. Minus, in this case, our only deductions are going to be our net tax. But that is not necessarily the case. You could have other deductions as well. So read the question carefully to see is there anything else that would get taken away to get your net income. So then we say, well, I don't know, I'm looking for the gross income. I don't know the net tax. So how would I say to get the net tax? Well, the net tax is going to be the gross tax minus my tax credit. The gross tax I don't know. So the gross tax is going to be my T20 plus my T40. So I need to get the amount of tax I have to pay at 20% and the amount of tax I have to pay at 40%. And in this case, they're going to have to be written, or some of it is going to have to be written in terms of the gross income, because we don't know the gross income that we're getting percentages of. So let's draw in our picture. So we draw in our tower of income to remind us of our different parts. The first 35,300 we pay at 20% tax, and the remainder up to our gross income we pay at 40% tax. So that means we're going to pay 40%, so 40% out of 100 of the amount between the gross income and our standard rate cutoff point. So that's gross income minus 35,300. And our 20% is relatively straightforward. It's just 20% of 35,300. So that's 20%. We always write it as a fraction and then work out what the decimal is, of 35,300. And when we work that down, you get 7,060. And for our 40% tax, you get 0.4 times everything in the bracket. So that's going to be 0.4 GI minus 0.4 times our 35,300 ends up being 14 and 120. So that is my 40%, the amount I have to pay at 40% tax, and this is the amount I have to pay at, or Jean has to pay at 20% tax. So we then add that up. Our gross tax is going to be our tax at 20% plus our tax at 40%, which is going to be 7,060 plus 0.4 GI minus 14,120. And we have like terms to add up there. That's my gross tax. I have like terms to add there, and I get my gross tax is going to be equal to 0.4 GI minus 7,060. So my net tax is going to be, keep telling ourselves the story, gross tax minus tax credit is going to be my gross tax 0.4 GI minus 7,060, and we take away our tax credit of 1650, and we get, so now we have our net tax. We go back up and we say, hey, well, now we can get our link in our net income is going to be our gross income minus our net tax. So we're going to have our 33,500 is equal to the gross income minus all of this. And we rearrange, we multiply out our bracket, I should say. And we have some like terms that we can add up. And we could subtract 8,710 from both sides to get the gross income stuff by itself. And dividing by 0.6, so we had 1 GI minus 0.4 GI, so we end up with 0.6 GI. So divide by the coefficient of our unknown, as normal, and we get 41316.67 is equal to our gross income. So by telling ourselves the story of this as we practice our questions, we are able to work backwards or forwards as needed. And that is what